Hashtag the Galactic War stopped cold when humans stepped onto the battlefield. The Zephyrian fleet stretched across 3-star systems, their crystalline warships catching the light of distant suns like deadly prisms. Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. The war against the Thrakkery Empire had raged for 600 cycles, and, finally, the end was within reach. The Thrakkery homeworld of Vexthala hung before them like a wounded beast, its orbital defenses shattered, its moon bases smoking ruins. Kextar's mandibles clicked in approval as he observed the siege formation. 12,000 Zephyrian vessels surrounded the planet, their energy cannons charging for the final bombardment that would end this conflict forever. Admiral, his tactical officer hissed through translator circuits. The Thrakkery are broadcasting surrender terms. Kextar's 4 eyes narrowed. Too late for mercy. They chose this path when they attacked our mining colonies. Begin the bombardment sequence. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, their scaled hands dancing over control surfaces. Energy readings climbed toward critical levels as the massive fleet prepared to reduce Vexthala to cosmic dust. This would send a message to every species in the galaxy. The Zephyrian collective was not to be challenged. Then, the sensor's officer's alarm chittering cut through the bridge's focused atmosphere. Admiral, unknown contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Kextar whirled to face the main display, where new signatures were materializing at the edge of the system. At first, there were only a dozen contacts, then 100, then 1,000. Ships unlike anything in the galactic database emerged from hyperspace tiers, their hulls dark and angular, lacking the elegant curves or crystalline beauty of known civilizations. What species builds vessels like those? The tactical officer whispered. Before Kextar could respond, every communication channel in both fleets suddenly crackled to life with an unknown signal. A voice spoke in perfect Zephyrian, then switched to flawless Thrakkery, then continued cycling through every known language in the galaxy. Attention, all vessels. This is Admiral Sarachun of the United Earth Federation Navy. You will immediately cease all hostile actions and withdraw to minimum safe distance from the planet Vexthala. Any ship that fires on another vessel or planetary target will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. Kextar's blood ran cold. Umans, the mythical death world species that galactic intelligence agencies have been whispering about for decades. Most civilizations dismissed them as legend, tales of impossibly aggressive bipeds from a world so hostile it should have been uninhabitable. Admiral, his communications officer stammered, should we respond? Kextar straightened his considerable height. The Zephyrian collective had conquered 47 star systems. They would not be intimidated by unknown aliens, mythical or not. Open a channel, he commanded. Unknown vessels, you have entered a Zephyrian military operation. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. This is your only warning. The response came within seconds, the alien voice calm and measured. Admiral Kextar of the Zephyrian collective, this is your only warning. Stand down your weapons and withdraw your forces. The massacre you're planning ends now. How they know his name? Kextar's tactical mind raced as he studied the human fleet. Their ships were smaller than Zephyrian dreadnoughts, but moved with an unsettling fluidity, maintaining perfect formation despite their numbers. More concerning was their positioning, already cutting off escape routes with mathematical precision. Tactical analysis, Kextar demanded. Sir, their vessels appear to be heavily armed, but their technology signatures are unfamiliar. Energy readings suggest advanced power systems, possibly beyond our current capabilities. Kextar made his decision. The Zephyrian collective had not built a galactic empire by backing down from challenges. All ships target the human fleet. Show them the price of interfering with Zephyrian justice. 12,000 ships turned their weapons toward the human formation. Energy cannons that could crack planets swiveled to target the dark vessels. For a moment, space held its breath. Then, Admiral Chen's voice returned, carrying a note of genuine sadness. I was hoping you'd be smarter than that. The human fleet moved like a living thing. Ships that had seemed motionless suddenly accelerated at impossible speeds, their formations flowing like water around the Zephyrian battle lines. Weapons that had appeared modest compared to Zephyrian cannons opened fire, and Kextar watched in horror as his mighty fleet began to die. The humans didn't fight like any species he'd encountered. Zephyrian doctrine emphasized overwhelming firepower and coordinated volleys. The Thrakkery favored swarm tactics and ramming attacks. But the humans fought with a calculated brutality that spoke of countless wars and hard-won experience. Their missiles didn't just explode, they sought out critical systems with surgical precision. Their energy weapons carved through Zephyrian shields as if they weren't there. Most terrifying of all, their ships seemed to anticipate every Zephyrian maneuver, reacting to orders before they were even given. How are they moving so fast? The tactical officer wailed as another squadron of Zephyrian cruisers vanished in plasma fire. Kextar watched his fleet's formation crumble in real time. 300 ships destroyed in the first 30 seconds. 500 gone within the first minute. The humans weren't just winning. They were conducting a masterclass in naval warfare, dismantling the collective's most powerful fleet with methodical efficiency. Sir, the communications officer called out. The Thrakkery fleet is moving. On the tactical display, the battered Thrakkery vessels were breaking orbit, but instead of fleeing, they were moving to attack positions against the Zephyrians. Kextar realized with growing dread that the humans had somehow communicated with the enemy fleet without any detectable transmissions. Now, the Zephyrian fleet faced enemies on two fronts. The Thrakkery ships, moments away from annihilation, had suddenly found new purpose. But they weren't fighting with their usual desperate fury. Like the humans, they moved with coordinated precision, their attacks synchronized perfectly with the human assault. Admiral, his second-in-command, screamed over the sound of failing systems. We've lost 40% of the fleet. Our formation is collapsing. Kextar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The most powerful military force in galactic history was being systematically destroyed by a species that supposedly didn't even exist. Worse, the humans were doing it without losing a single ship. As if responding to his thoughts, Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge once again. Admiral Kextar, you have 30 seconds to order a general retreat before this becomes a complete massacre. Your people deserve better leadership than someone who throws their lives away for pride. The bridge fell silent except for the constant alerts of dying ships. Kextar looked around at his crew, seeing fear in their eyes for the first time in his career. These were veteran warriors who had fought in a dozen campaigns, but the human assault had shaken them to their core. Sir, his tactical officer whispered, we can't win this. They're not just more advanced. They fight like they've done this 1,000 times before. Kextar closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 6 centuries of Zephyrian military tradition crushing down on him. But Admiral Chen was right about one thing. His people deserved better than a leader who chose pride over their lives. All ships, he said quietly, general retreat. Emergency jump to rally point Tango 7. The surviving Zephyrian vessels disengaged immediately, their crews no doubt grateful for the reprieve. Emergency hyperspace jumps opened across the battlefield as the once mighty armada fled in chaos. Within minutes, only debris and escape pods remained of what had been the collective's greatest triumph. As the last Zephyrian ship vanished into hyperspace, Admiral Chen's voice filled the empty space one final time, broadcasting on all frequencies so both fleets could hear. Let me be very clear to both the Zephyrian Collective and the Thrakkery Empire. Humanity has been watching your war for quite some time. We've seen the civilian casualties, the orbital bombardments, the destruction of inhabited worlds. This ends now. We're calling for an immediate ceasefire and peace negotiations. Kextar, safely in hyperspace, slumped in his command chair as the implications hit him. The humans hadn't just defeated his fleet. They had announced their presence to the galaxy as a power greater than either empire. Everything was about to change. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrifying thought took root. If the humans had been watching the war all along, what else had they seen? What else did they know? And, most frightening of all, what were they planning to do about it? The Galactic War that had raged for 600 years had indeed stopped cold. But Kextar suspected that was only the beginning of humanity's involvement in galactic affairs. Hashtag the Galactic War stopped cold when humans stepped onto the battlefield 3 days after the battle at Vexthala. The Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 43 species filled the circular amphitheater, their varied forms creating a symphony of clicks, hisses, and electronic translations. But today, one species was notably absent from the proceedings. Humans had never been invited to join the Galactic Council. Most civilizations had considered them a backwater species at best, a dangerous myth at worst. Now, as news of their devastating intervention spread throughout known space, that oversight seemed catastrophically short-sighted. Counselor Vexna of the Altarian Federation called the emergency session to order, her tentacles weaving nervous patterns as she spoke. We are here to discuss the unprecedented events at Vexthala. The implications for galactic stability are... She was interrupted by a shimmering in the chamber's center. Advanced holographic technology activated, far beyond anything the Council possessed, and, suddenly, Admiral Sarah Chun stood before them as if physically present. Her calm demeanor and simple uniform contrasted sharply with the ornate robes and ceremonial weapons of the assembled delegates. "Counselors," Chun said, nodding respectfully, "thank you for accommodating this unscheduled appearance. I'm Admiral Chun, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Federation." The chamber erupted. Delegates jumped to their feet, shouting questions and demands in dozens of languages. Only the Thackeray representative, Ambassador Zethare, remained seated, watching the human with calculating eyes. Counselor Vexna struggled to restore order. "Admiral Chun, while we appreciate your dramatic entrance, this council has protocols. Humanity has never requested membership or even recognition under galactic law." Chun smiled, and somehow that expression was more unsettling than any threat. "Counselor Vexna, with respect, we've been observing galactic civilization for quite some time. Your protocols seem more focused on maintaining the status quo than preventing catastrophes like the war we just ended." The Zephyrian observer, Admiral Kextar, stood shakily. His injuries from the battle were still visible, and his voice carried the weight of defeat. "The human speaks truly. Their fleet destroyed mine in minutes. If they wished harm to this council, we would already be dead." An uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. Every species present had heard the tactical reports. The humans hadn't just won at Vexthala. They had rewritten the rules of space warfare in the process. Chun continued as if she hadn't just been threatened by dozens of heavily armed species. "The United Earth Federation has been monitoring this conflict for the past 57 years. We've documented 14 occasions where civilian populations were targeted deliberately, 17 instances of biological weapons usage, 43 cases of orbital bombardment against non-military targets." She paused, letting those numbers sink in. "We've tried to hope that galactic civilization would find its moral center without intervention. We were wrong." The hegemony representative, a massive creature of living rock, rumbled forward. "Young species, you speak of morality while demonstrating military might that surpasses our greatest achievements. Do you expect us to simply accept human dominance?" Chen's expression grew serious. "Dominance was never our goal, but we will not stand by and watch civilizations destroy each other over resources that could be shared, or territories that could be negotiated, or pride that costs innocent lives." Ambassador Zethare finally spoke, her crystalline voice cutting through the tension. "Admiral Chun, the Thackeray Empire wishes to know, what do humans propose?" immediate cessation of all military actions between your empires, withdrawal of occupation forces from contested systems, and, most importantly, a commitment to resolving your differences through negotiation rather than warfare. The chamber erupted again, but this time with laughter. Delegates found the idea of ending a 600-year war through talking absurd. But Chen waited patiently for the noise to subside. "You find diplomacy amusing," she observed. "Perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing." The holographic display around Chun suddenly expanded, filling the chamber with a three-dimensional map of local space. Red zones marked areas of active conflict, while yellow indicated contested territories. The scope was staggering. The war had touched nearly every system in this galactic sector. "This is the current state of your conflict," Chen explained. "Now, let me show you what we've prepared." The map shifted, revealing new markers. Blue dots appeared throughout the contested zones, hundreds of them, each representing human observation posts and defensive installations. For the past 5 decades, we've been quietly building a network throughout this region. Every major shipping lane, every strategic resource deposit, every critical hyperspace junction now has a human presence. The implications hit the delegates like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just intervened at Vexthala. They had been systematically positioning themselves to control the entire theater of war. Counselor Vexna's voice was barely above a whisper. "You've been planning this intervention for 50 years. We've been hoping to avoid it for 50 years, Chen corrected. But we've also been preparing for the possibility that we need to act." When Admiral Kextar ordered the bombardment of Vexthala, that line was finally crossed. The Zephyrian Admiral looked as if he'd been struck. "You knew what I was planning before I ordered it." Chen's expression softened slightly. "Admiral, your empire's military communications aren't as secure as you believe. We've been monitoring both fleets for years, hoping someone would show restraint. When it became clear that wouldn't happen, we acted." The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. If humans could intercept military communications at will, then every species' defenses were essentially meaningless. The technological gap wasn't just significant, it was insurmountable. But Chen wasn't finished. "However, we're not interested in conquest or control. What we want is peace. Real, lasting peace that allows civilizations to grow and prosper without fear." She gestured, and the display changed again, showing detailed economic projections. "The resources you've been fighting over represent less than 3% of what this sector could produce through cooperative development. The technologies you could share would advance every civilization by centuries. The cultural exchange alone would be invaluable." Ambassador Zethra leaned forward. "And if we refuse this cooperation?" Chen's voice remained calm, but steel entered her tone. "Then we'll enforce the peace ourselves. No more orbital bombardments. No more genocide. No more civilian casualties. Species that can't control themselves will find their ability to wage war severely limited." The threat hung in the air like a drawn blade. Every delegate understood the implications. The humans had demonstrated overwhelming military superiority, but more importantly, they had the infrastructure to back up their threats throughout the entire sector. The hegemony representative spoke carefully. "What assurances do we have that humans won't simply become the new conquerors?" Chen smiled again, but this time there was genuine warmth in it. "Because conquest isn't sustainable, and it's not who we are. We've learned hard lessons about the costs of warfare. Our own history is full of conflicts that achieved nothing but suffering." She paused, seeming to consider her words carefully. "Humanity has spent the last 3 centuries learning to work together despite our differences. We've discovered that cooperation produces far better results than domination. We want to share that lesson, not impose it by force." The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this information. The idea of a species voluntarily limiting its own power was almost incomprehensible to civilizations built on conquest and hierarchy. Finally, Counselor Vexna spoke. "Admiral Chun, What specifically are you proposing? A formal peace treaty between the Zephyrian Collective and the Thracery Empire, mediated by neutral parties. Reparations for civilian casualties on both sides. A joint commission to govern disputed territories until permanent solutions can be negotiated. And, most importantly, a commitment to resolve future disputes through diplomacy backed by enforceable galactic law. The ambitious scope of the proposal was breathtaking. It would require both empires to essentially abandon their territorial ambitions and rebuild their relationship from the ground up. Admiral Kextar stood slowly. And if the collective agrees to these terms, then humanity will provide technological assistance for rebuilding damaged worlds, share medical advances to treat war-related casualties, and guarantee the security of both empires against external threats. Ambassador Zetharay's crystalline features showed surprise. You would defend your former enemies? We would defend the peace, Chen corrected. If either empire is attacked while honoring the treaty, they'll have the full support of the United Earth Federation. The offer was unprecedented in galactic history. No species had ever offered to guarantee the security of their enemies without demanding tribute or vassalage in return. Chen's hologram began to fade. I'll give you 72 hours to consider our proposal. Delegates from both empires are welcome aboard our ship, the Harmony, to discuss terms in detail. As the image disappeared, the chamber erupted in urgent discussions. Every delegate understood that they were witnessing a pivotal moment in galactic history. The age of endless warfare might actually be coming to an end. But in the back of many minds, a troubling question lingered. If humans could end a 600-year war in 3 days, what else were they capable of? And was their offer of peaceful cooperation genuine, or simply a more sophisticated form of conquest? The answer, everyone knew, would shape the future of galactic civilization. The Galactic War stopped cold when humans stepped onto the battlefield 6 months after the Treaty of Harmony was signed. Ambassador Zetharay stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Thracery station orbiting Kexthala Prime. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see something that would have been impossible to imagine during the war years. Zephyrian and Thracery ships working together to construct a joint research facility. The human ship Harmony hung in space nearby, its dark hull a constant reminder of how dramatically everything had changed. What surprised Zetharay most was how quickly both empires had adapted to the new reality. The benefits of cooperation were becoming impossible to ignore. Ambassador, her aide chirped softly. Admiral Chun is requesting a meeting. Zetharay's mandibles clicked in amusement. She's early. The quarterly review isn't scheduled for another week. When Admiral Chun arrived, she wasn't alone. Admiral Kextar accompanied her, looking remarkably different from the defeated commander who had fled Vexthala months ago. The Zephyrian officer had adapted to peacetime with surprising grace, becoming an advocate for cooperation within his own military. Admiral Chun, Admiral Kextar, Zetharay greeted them formally. To what do we owe this unexpected visit? Chen's expression was serious as she activated a holographic display between them. We have a problem. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something concerning. The display showed a star map of the Outer Rim territories, far beyond the borders of either empire. Red markers indicated unknown contacts moving through previously empty space. We call them the Devourers, Chun continued grimly. They're a nomadic species that consumes entire solar systems. Strip mines planets down to their cores, harvests all biological matter, then moves on to the next system. Admiral Kextar's 4 eyes widened in alarm. How many ships are we talking about? Conservative estimate? 50,000 vessels, ranging from planet crackers to system-wide energy collectors. They've already consumed 17 uninhabited systems, and they're moving toward populated space. The magnitude of the threat hit both aliens immediately. The war between their empires had involved perhaps 20,000 ships total. This enemy outnumbered anything either civilization could field. Ambassador Zetharay studied the tactical display with growing dread. Their trajectory takes them directly through both our territories. When will they arrive? At current speed, 18 months until they reach the outer colonies. 2 years until they threaten core worlds. Chen paused, letting the timeline sink in. Neither empire could stop them alone. Together, you might have a chance. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The peace treaty that both empires had reluctantly accepted was now their only hope for survival. Admiral Kextar straightened to his full imposing height. What does humanity propose? Chen's response surprised them both. Nothing. This is your fight. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Ambassador Zethra found her voice. You're abandoning us? We're giving you the chance to prove what you've learned. Chen's voice was firm but not unkind. For 600 years, both your civilizations have poured resources into destroying each other. Now you have the opportunity to use those same resources to build something greater. She gestured, and the display shifted to show combined fleet projections. Your joint naval forces are actually quite impressive. The Zephyrian energy weapons combined with Thackeray shield technology could create incredibly effective warships. Your manufacturing capabilities could build a defense fleet that might actually work. Admiral Kextar studied the projections with the eye of a veteran strategist. The tactical challenges are significant, but not impossible. If we could integrate our command structures, the Thackeray rapid response formations could screen for your heavy battleships, Zethra added, already seeing the possibilities. Our hit and run tactics against their planet crackers while your dreadnoughts engage their main fleet. Chen watched their animated discussion with satisfaction. There's more. Our analysis suggests the Devourers aren't just raiders. They're running from something. Both aliens turned to her sharply. Running from what? Kextar demanded. We're not sure, but their movement patterns suggest they're fleeing rather than expanding. Something in deep space has them terrified enough to consume entire solar systems just for the resources to keep moving. The implications were staggering. If something could frighten a civilization capable of destroying star systems, what did that mean for the galaxy as a whole? Which brings us to our real proposal, Chun continued. Build the joint fleet. Fight the Devourers. Prove that cooperation can overcome any threat. And when you succeed, we'll discuss membership in the Galactic Defense Alliance. Ambassador Zethra's crystalline features showed confusion. What alliance? Chin smiled. The one that doesn't exist yet. The one you're going to help us build. For the first time, Admiral Kextar saw the full scope of humanity's long-term planning. They hadn't just ended a war or brokered a peace treaty. They had been preparing for threats that neither empire had imagined. How many species have you approached? He asked quietly. 17 so far. Most are still skeptical, but the Altarian Federation has agreed to provide logistical support. The hegemony is considering contributing their industrial capabilities. Several smaller civilizations are interested in intelligence sharing agreements. The vision was breathtaking. A galaxy-wide alliance dedicated to mutual defense and cooperation, led by species that had proven they could put aside their differences when faced with existential threats. What role would humanity play in this alliance? Zethra asked carefully. The same role we're playing now. Advisors, mediators, and, when necessary, enforcers. But not rulers. We've learned that forced unity never lasts. Admiral Kextar considered this for a long moment. You could simply destroy the Devourers yourselves. Your technology is clearly superior. Chen's expression grew somber. Yes, we could. But then what? You'd both remain dependent on us for protection. The next threat would require our intervention again. Eventually, the galaxy would just be humanity and a collection of client species. She paused, staring out at the joint construction project visible through the windows. We've seen what happens when one species becomes dominant. It doesn't end well for anyone, including the dominant species. The truth of that statement resonated with both former enemies. Their own empires have been built on conquest and domination, and The result had been 6 centuries of warfare that nearly destroyed them both. So, Chun continued, we're offering you something different. The chance to prove that cooperation is stronger than conquest. That diversity creates resilience. That the galaxy is big enough for everyone to prosper. Ambassador Zethare moved to the window, watching Zephyrian and Thracery engineers working side by side on the research station. And if we fail against the Devourers, then we'll step in. But I don't think you'll fail. Chun joined her at the window. You've already accomplished something that most of the galaxy thought impossible. You've turned enemies into allies in less than a year. Admiral Kekstar nodded slowly. The joint fleet proposal has merit. Our combined industrial capacity could produce vessels neither empire could build alone. More importantly, Zethare added, it would require our officers to train together, plan together, fight together. The kind of integration that would make future wars between us almost impossible. Chin smiled. Now you're beginning to understand the real purpose of this exercise. The 3 officers stood in comfortable silence, watching the construction proceed below. Ships that had once been mortal enemies worked together to build something new, something that represented hope for the entire galaxy. Finally, Admiral Kekstar spoke. When do we begin? You already have, Chen replied. The moment you started planning together instead of against each other, you began building the future. The Devourers are just your first test. As if summoned by their conversation, the communication system chimed with an incoming message. The holographic form of Counselor Vexna appeared, her tentacles waving with obvious excitement. Ambassador Zethare, Admiral Kekstar, Admiral Chun, she said formally, the Galactic Council has voted. By a margin of 37-6, we approve the formation of a joint Zephyrian-Thracery defense fleet. Additionally, we are prepared to discuss formal cooperation agreements with the proposed Galactic Defense Alliance. The moment marked a turning point in galactic civilization. The war that had defined an era was truly over, replaced by cooperation on a scale never before imagined. But, as the 3 officers celebrated this victory, Admiral Chen's expression remained thoughtful. The Devourers represented just the first of many challenges the galaxy would face. And, somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, whatever had frightened the Devourers into flight was still out there, waiting. The galaxy had learned to work together just in time, because the real tests were yet to come, and they would require every species, every ship, and every spark of courage that the galactic community could muster. The war had stopped cold when humans stepped onto the battlefield. But the peace they had engineered would determine whether civilization itself could survive what was coming next.